Hello, my friends. Today's movie tells the story of a woman named Cecilia.
He said that I could never leave him.
And when Cecilia's abusive ex takes his own life and leaves her his fortune,
What happened to him?
she suspects his death was a hoax. As a series of coincidences turn lethal, Cecilia works to prove that she is being hunted by someone nobody can see. The movie begins with Cecilia sleeping peacefully. She quietly wakes up without disturbing the person beside her named Adrian. She retrieves a bottle of sedatives and ensures that he has drunk from the glass of water containing them. Once satisfied, she empties the water from the glass and stealthily moves to the closet. Finding a ventilation opening inside, she opens it and takes out her bag of clothes and papers. Next, she goes to the camera near the bed, adjusting it to face Adrian so she can monitor if he wakes up. She then heads downstairs to the laboratory on the ground floor. There, she switches off all the cameras except the one by the bed and disables the house alarm to prevent noise when she opens the door. She changes her clothes and rushes downstairs to escape, suddenly sensing someone following her. She finds the dog also wanting to go with her, and she removes the collar around his neck, designed to shock him if he tries to escape. Meanwhile, the dog hits the car, triggering the car alarm. Cecilia flees quickly, leaving Adrian awake and discovering her absence. At that moment, her sister Emily arrives in the car to pick her up. She puts her bag in the back seat, and during this, the sedative bottle falls. As she gets into the car, they find Adrian coming angrily, trying to pull her out of the car by any means. Emily quickly drives away, and Adrian discovers the sedative bottle and takes. Afterwards, Cecilia goes to her friend James, who works as a police officer. So now she feels safe. However, Cecilia is currently suffering from psychological trauma due to what she had experienced in the past period. James asks her to overcome her fear and start going out of the house, at least to get the mail from the front of the house. Just as she reaches there, she sees a man running towards her, causing her to panic and run away, even though the man is just jogging normally. After a while, Cecilia is sitting while James is fixing up the house. The doorbell rings, and it's her sister Emily. Cecilia gets flustered because she had asked her not to come over before, fearing that Adrian might be monitoring her and following her until she reached Emily's place. However, Emily tells her that the only reason she came is because she read an important news article today. When Cecilia reads the news, she finds out that Adrian committed suicide after she left him. Emily asks her what Adrian did to make her so scared, and Cecilia begins to recount how he controlled every aspect of her life, what she ate, how she spoke, and even what she thought. And if he didn't like what he thought she was thinking, he would hit and torture her. Afterwards, Cecilia decides that she must leave the house and continue her life. She goes to get the mail and finds James talking to his daughter Sydney. Cecilia is surprised to find a letter for her in the midst of the mail and wonders how anyone could know she is staying at this house. She discovers that it's an inheritance notification. The next day, Cecilia goes with her sister Emily to meet the lawyer responsible for executing the will, who turns out to be Adrian's brother. He informs her that the inheritance is $5 million to be received in installments. She will also inherit all of his assets, but there's one condition. She must not commit murder. At night, Cecilia is in her room and hears a noise in the room, but she doesn't find anything, and everything seems normal. In the morning, Selena gets up to prepare breakfast. James is ready to leave for work and tells her he's in a hurry and won't have breakfast with them. He asks her to wake up his daughter. Cecilia goes to wake her up, and here we see the knife disappear. Suddenly, the flames on the stove increase, causing the food to burn quickly. Sydney quickly uses the fire extinguisher to put out the fire and asks Cecilia how it happened. Cecilia believes she inadvertently increased the fire and forgot about it. When night falls, Cecilia is sitting using her laptop when suddenly she hears a noise coming from outside. She goes to check the source of the sound and turns on the lights, but she doesn't find anything. Behind her, we see the door chain rattling and the house door open. When Cecilia goes out to see who opened the door, she finds no one in front of the house. We will notice that the air is extremely cold from Cecilia's breath. Here, we see the breath of another person behind her. When Cecilia doesn't find anything, she forgets about it and goes back to sleep. During their sleep, we see the blanket being pulled off them, and we see the flash of a mobile phone someone is using to take pictures of them. Cecilia wakes up feeling cold and finds the blanket has fallen. Logically, the blanket usually falls beside the bed, from the right or left, but she is surprised to find it by the bed at the foot end. However, she takes the blanket and returns, but she finds an impression as if someone was standing on it, and it seems there is movement. Here, she becomes frightened and calls for James. He quickly arrives and asks what's happening. She tells him about what happened. Sydney takes out her self-defense spray in case she needs to use it. When he checked the room and don't find anyone, James tells Sydney, "Who are you gonna fight with that? There's no one here." Then he advises Cecilia that she needs to calm down and stop imagining things that aren't real because of her fear. Eventually, she agrees with him and admits that he's right. The next morning, Cecilia goes for a job interview. We find out she's an architect. She starts talking about herself, and the manager asks to see her previous work. When she goes to get her papers, she finds they're missing. Here, Cecilia begins to feel unwell and loses consciousness. They take her to the hospital. There, the doctor tells her that they've conducted blood tests and they'll contact her once the results are available. Later, while she's in the bathroom, the phone rings. When she answers, she discovers that it's a call from the hospital. The doctor informs her that the reason for her fainting spells is that they found a large amount of sedative in her blood test results. Additionally, they discovered something else. But Cecilia leaves the phone and doesn't hear the rest when she sees a bottle on the bathtub. When she picks it up, she realizes it's a sedative bottle similar to the one used to sedate Adrian at the beginning of the movie. But when she turns it over and finds blood on it, she confirms it's the same bottle. This is because when Adrian broke the car window, his hand bled, and when he touched the bottle, blood got on it. The next day, Cecilia and James go to Adrian's brother. She tells him to inform Adrian to stop what he's doing. She recounts that the day before she left Adrian, she was lost in thought, contemplating ways to escape from him. She was planning in her mind how to do it. Without uttering a word, Adrian looked at her and said, "You won't be able to escape from me, and even if you manage to escape, I'll reach you. But when I reach you, you won't be able to see me. However, I'll leave you a sign to let you know that I'm here." She says that Adrian was a pioneer in the field of optics, and surely he found a way to disappear using it. His brother says he saw the body himself, and he even cremated it and put the ashes in this box with his own hands. This way, she allows Adrian to manipulate her mind even after he's dead, and they treat her as if her nerves are shot, and she's imagining things. After that, Cecilia goes to visit her sister, and she finds Emily meeting her in an unfriendly manner. Emily tells her that she couldn't imagine that when she stands next to her and helps her. It feels suffocating, but Cecilia doesn't understand what she's talking about. When she asks her why she said that, Emily tells her about the message she sent today. So, she tries to explain to her that she doesn't know anything about this message. And of course, Adrian is the one who sent it. And surely Emily knows that he's dead. And so Emily will think that Cecilia has gone crazy and advise her to see a psychiatrist, deciding to cut off her relationship with her. When Cecilia returns home and reads the message sent from her laptop, she finds that it contains harsh words along with a wish for Emily's death. Afterward, Cecilia continues to cry for a long time out of sadness, especially since no one stood by her except Emily and James. Now she has lost Emily. Suddenly, Sydney enters the room and tries to cheer up Cecilia. She suggests, "What do you think about kicking Dad out of the house and making a chocolate cake? We could have a girls-only party." Cecilia's mood brightens up, and she likes the idea. "Here," Sydney screams and calls for her father, telling him that Cecilia hit her. Of course, this is the only explanation since there's no one else in the room besides them. Cecilia swears she didn't touch the girl and insists that it must have been Adrian. At this point, James gets angry and tells her that's enough nonsense. At this point, Sydney is scared and says she doesn't want to be in the same place with Cecilia. So James decides to take Sydney to another place and tells Cecilia that when he comes back, he doesn't want to find her at home. When Cecilia, finding herself alone, decides she needs to rely on herself, she takes the bag of coffee and sprinkles it on the floor so that if he enters the room, she can identify his footsteps. After waiting for a long time with no one showing up, she gets an idea. So she picks up the phone and dials Adrian's number, only to be shocked when she hears the sound coming from the attic above the house. When she goes up and calls again, she finds his own phone there. On it, she discovers pictures of them while they were sleeping. She also finds the knife she used in the kitchen on the day the food caught fire and her missing work papers. With all this evidence, she realizes she's not crazy. Then, she receives a message on her phone from an unknown number with the word surprise. As she descends from the attic, she senses something strange. She descends while holding the knife, trying to locate him. At that moment, she hears the sound of running water. When she went to investigate the source of the sound, she found that he had washed away the paint residue. Suddenly, he attacks her. She tries to fend him off but struggles. Then, she grabs a dish and hits him with it before fleeing the house. She immediately requests an Uber and asks the driver to take her to Adrian's house. Upon arriving at the house, she asks the driver to wait for her until she comes back out. When she enters the house, she finds the dog there, even though the owner of the house is supposed to be dead. And there's no one else living there. Certainly, the dog wouldn't survive on its own, so it's clear that Adrian is the one feeding it. When she goes down to the lab, she notices the presence of a new machine she's never seen before. Additionally, she observes a screen displaying camera capture, despite there being no cameras visible. As soon as she touches the screen, she discovers a suit filled with many cameras beginning to appear. The dog barks as it senses someone entering the house. Cecilia quickly grabs the suit and searches for a place to hide it. She remembers the ventilation opening in the closet, where she hid the bag earlier in the movie. Then she hears a noise in the room, so she hides. She finds the door opening and a footprint on the floor, and the dog continues barking at it. The strange thing is that the dog can at least distinguish its owner by scent. That's indeed odd. The dog barks at him as if he were a stranger. Here, Cecilia seizes the opportunity of his distraction with the dog to make her escape from the house. On the way, She calls her sister and tells her that she found the evidence supporting her claim that Adrian is still alive, and she asks Emily to meet up, and they indeed meet at a restaurant. Cecilia starts telling her about the suit she saw, and suddenly Emily becomes attentive, sensing something strange. Afterwards, he takes Cecilia's hand and places the knife in it. Then they take her to a mental institution. She keeps saying she didn't kill Emily, but they still put her in a room, sedate her, and restrain her.
Surprise.
The next day, the detective and James interrogate her. The detective asks her about the message she sent to Emily days ago, wishing for her death. She denies it, but he tells her that tests have shown she's been taking large doses of sedatives recently. She insists that Adrian must have drugged at her. She claims to have evidence that Adrian is still alive and responsible for everything, but she can't say it because he is in the room. Naturally, the detective assumes she's insane, and even James starts to believe she's lost it. When she returns to her room, the nurse tells her they found out from the tests that she's pregnant. They detected the pregnancy recently, meaning it's happened during the recent period. Cecilia is surprised because she's supposed to have left Adrian a long time ago, and this explains the sedative found in her bloodstream. So, putting the pieces together, it seems that he drugged her and assaulted her while she was asleep. The next day, Adrian's brother Arrives, as he's the lawyer responsible for the will, he tells her that one of the conditions of the will was that she doesn't commit a murder. Therefore, he's forced her to halt the inheritance transfer process. He informs her that she can either contest it in court, but being currently bankrupt, she wouldn't afford the legal expenses, or she can sign the waiver now to settle the matter without complications. Then he presents a third option, keeping the child and returning to Adrian. She refuses and throws the papers on the floor. When he picks them up, she grabs a pen from his bag. Then she returns to her room and wonders how Adrian's brother knew about the pregnancy when it was only the nurse and her in the room when she was informed. This implies that Adrian is in the room with her now, so she takes the pen she grabbed and uses its tip to harm herself, stating that she'll commit suicide to deprive Adrian of herself and their child. She says this to prompt him to try to stop her, and indeed, he appears. She starts hitting him with the pen, causing damage to the suit. Here, a security guard approaches the noise and asks her to stop causing a disturbance. Suddenly, he notices someone standing beside him. He attempts to stun them, but they redirect the shock towards him, causing him to lose consciousness. Seizing the opportunity, Cecilia escapes while the security guards try to apprehend her. Suddenly, they encounter an unseen force, taking down one after another before disappearing. Cecilia grabs a gun and follows after him. Outside, Cecilia finds a car with its trunk open. As she approaches, Adrian grabs her and takes the gun from her. He tells her that he will continue to kill everyone she loves until she returns to him. He says it's Sydney, James's daughter's turn now. Then a security guard approaches to apprehend Cecilia, and Adrian shoots him. He walks away, and the lone security guard notices him. Cecilia takes the guard's gun and follows Adrian. As Adrian gets into the car, Cecilia fires at him, causing him to swerve into another car. Cecilia takes the second car and heads towards James's house. On the way, she calls James and asks him where Sydney is. He tells her that he's at work and left Sydney alone at home. Cecilia urgently tells him to head home immediately because Sydney's life is in danger. While Sydney is asleep in her room, she suddenly hears a noise. She grabs her pepper spray and sprays it around her. Then, she notices objects around her moving, as if someone bumped into them. She screams and rushes outside, but something knocks her to the ground. Fortunately, her father arrives home just in time. As he enters, he finds Sydney lying on the ground, making choking sounds as if someone is strangling her. When he approaches her, he gets hit, falling to the ground. He tries to hold onto the gun, but he keeps getting hit until he loses consciousness. At that moment, Cecilia enters with a fire extinguisher and a gun. She uses the fire extinguisher to locate the attacker and fires the gun at him. Finally, James believes that she is not crazy. Cecilia then removes the mask of the suit from the attacker and finds out that he is Adrian's brother. The police immediately rush to Adrian's house and begin searching until they hear someone calling for help. When they break in, they find Adrian tied up and held captive. Hold on a second. There's something illogical here. When Sydney entered the room and sprayed him in the eyes, he fell here. And when she quickly left the room, it doesn't seem like he left at the same speed because he was still falling. The way Sydney fell suggests she was hit from the front. Additionally, the spray she used causes severe pain and temporary blindness, along with skin inflammation. But when Cecilia removed the suit mask from his brother's face, his eyes were fine. So, who had irritated eyes? Then Cecilia would be sitting in the police station with James. He tells her that the security personnel at the hospital witnessed what they saw and confirmed the truth of her words. With this, she is innocent of all charges, and Adrian's brother is the culprit. But Cecilia says that's not true. She's sure Adrian did all this. James tries to convince her with the evidence the police found. Cecilia responds, "You don't know Adrian. The same way he convinced people he was dead, he can convince them he was kidnapped." After that, Cecilia finds herself lying next to Sydney, and when she sees the marks of strangulation on her neck, she decides she has to take action to end this evil herself. She grabs her phone and calls Adrian, requesting to meet him. When she goes to his house, He tells her that he was unsure what to order for dinner. He ordered sushi, pasta, and meat. She chooses to have meat for dinner. When they sit down, Adrian expresses regret for how he treated her before and wishes they could reconcile. She tells him that for them to start anew, honesty is essential, and she now needs him to admit that he was the one behind everything, not his brother. Adrian denies any wrongdoing, claiming that it was his brother who exploited him and used the suit after kidnapping him and faking his death. Drawing closer to her, he says, "You know, I understand what you're thinking more than anyone else, and this shouldn't come as a surprise." Here it becomes evident from Selena's expression that she has understood. She heard the word surprise in the same tone of voice as before when he was wearing the suit. Adrian's face shows a wicked grin, indicating that he knows she has figured it out, but no one will believe her. So she asks him to let her go to the bathroom to wash her face, and Adrian starts eating while she is away. Suddenly, he stabs himself with the knife, and the surveillance camera captures it all. When Cecilia comes out of the bathroom, she finds him lying on the floor, dead. She quickly calls the police to report that someone has committed suicide. When James hears her, he rushes over to her. Cecilia gives the police the address and then retreats out of the camera's view. Suddenly, her face changes, and she calmly watches him as he dies, saying, "Surprise." When she comes out, James meets her, and she tells him that he committed suicide and the surveillance camera recorded everything. However, when James looks in the bag she brought, he finds the invisibility suit. From this, he realizes that she's the one who killed him. Going back a bit in the events to when she entered his house and he asked her what she wanted for dinner, she found that neither the pasta nor the sushi required a knife, so she ordered steak so they would need a fork and a knife. She tells James, "Do you see anything else besides him committing suicide?" He realizes that this is the only way to avenge her sister and James's friend. So, Cecilia becomes the sole heir to all of Adrian's wealth and assets, and she also has an invisibility suit. Here, the movie ends. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next videos.